You know him, Mike Mayo of Wells Fargo. Well, he's been blasting a change to Citigroup's bonus plan. He says Citi failed to specify, any targets or goals that would need to be achieved in order for top executives to earn payouts of up to $5 million each. Mayo wrote, "That's like charging us for dinner before we know if we're going to get hot dogs or caviar." The awards may amount to extra pay to execs for just doing their job. Mike Mayo, I'm very pleased to say, actually joins us now in the studio. Of course, he is head of US large cap bank research at Wells Fargo Securities, the perfect voice as we head into earnings season as well. And Mike, what a stir you caused. It's, I think, the most read story on the Bloomberg today. What are you seeing that you don't like?
Well, look, Citigroup has potential. They've had potential. We estimate that the sum of the parts are worth 50% more than the whole. You have a new CEO, Jane Fraser, who has the potential to act as a change agent. They've been restructuring the businesses. They're trying to change the culture. But you must also change the governance practices, the worst-in-class governance practices that have been at Citigroup since they were formed in late 1998. And as you know, I've gone to most of the annual meetings over the last decade. I testified to the Congressional Financial Committee after the global financial crisis and talked about Citigroup. Even as far back as 2002, I testified to Congress as part of Sarbanes-Oxley, and I was referring to Citigroup when saying, look, heads, you win, you make a lot of money, fantastic, that's capitalism. But when you also have tails and you win, that's not capitalism, that's a rigged system. And what we've seen at Citigroup for the past 2 decades is a rigged system where the executives make a boatload of money even after they miss target after target after target. So what we found was this regulatory statement release that says that Citi's top executives will get paid millions of dollars if they reach their targets, but they have not told the shareholders what those targets will be. So either internally they have these targets and they haven't disclosed these targets, and I assume we'll find those out at their Investor Day, March 2nd, or perhaps even more likely, they don't have the targets yet. They set the comp without giving us the targets, which is what led me to that quote. It's like charging shareholders, for dinner without knowing if we're going to have hot dogs or caviar.
There's certainly a disclosure issue here, Mike. Did you reach out to them? Is there any sort of sense here that we may find out what those targets are? Now, whether those targets are good or not, in your opinion, that remains to be seen. But do you think we're going to finally get a look to see exactly what it is?
Well, I think sunlight is the best, disinfectant. And so let's let the sun shine on Citigroup. So by raising this issue, and I'll tell you the feedback that I've gotten from investors, sometimes I know if I've just struck out, right? But based on this note today and the feedback that I've gotten from large investors, I'm sure that Citi will have to get this message. They'll have to disclose more information. But this idea of giving us little pieces of information on, late, in the summer, on a Friday when nobody's around.
Yeah.
I mean, that's old school stuff. That's last century stuff. Enough of that stuff. So Jane Fraser, she was off to a good start.
Yeah.
She has the potential to do it, but she needs to change that governance process. And perhaps Citigroup's board needs to change, too. It's not unusual to have a new CEO and then the board changes. So Jane Fraser, get it done.
In the meantime, broaden out for us as we're taking a look at bank earnings that are going to be kicking off tomorrow. What is the key point that you're waiting to hear for this quarter?
Well, look, we are in intermission. So Act 1 is all about bull market banking. So anything connected to the stock market should continue to do well. That's merger fees, wealth management fees, all private equity gains, especially at Goldman Sachs. We think they'll exceed expectations this quarter. And also, you have, credit quality euphoria. Credit has never been this good at some of the largest banks. And that's a combination of the government stimulus efforts, but it's also due to a decade's worth of de-risking by the largest banks. So you'll continue to see bull market banking, and we call that Act 1. But what we're waiting for is Act 2. And Act 2 is the return of loan growth, higher interest rates, and traditional banking revenues. So we've been waiting for Act 2 for a little while. So what we say is we are in intermission. So,
He loves a prop. He loves a prop.
Only with butter.
Grab your popcorn and wait for this loan growth to return. By the way, we have very high conviction that loan growth will return. It's not clear if it's this quarter or in 3 or 4 quarters, but it will return in the next year.
He's the only one with popcorn for some reason.
Oh, okay, we'll tell you what. Here we go. Here, we have one for you.
Don't give it to him.
Okay.
Just throw
He
it.
tends to throw
Badly
it.
behaved with popcorn.
Everybody
There's
eat
one for each of us.
There you go. It's full service.
popcorn
Is this
for
COVID safe?
popcorn for everybody.
What's the flavor? Looks delicious.
As we wait for the loan growth to return. So that's the first, second, and third question on every bank earnings call. You know, because you have the supply chain issues, you have a lack of building up of inventory, but once you get the workers working and the inventory builds, and then you're going to get more loan growth. And so the supply chain disruptions have impacted bank loan growth, but you're seeing signs that it will improve. The only question is it improving as fast as investors would like? And if not, we're going to stay in intermission. You're going to keep eating your popcorn. But I'd say at some point, finish eating that popcorn because Act 2 is going to begin.
I should point out, I'm the kind of guy who eats popcorn during the previews, and by the time the movie starts, it's already all gone. But your point is taken.
Considering intermissions, just hold thought for a minute, because we just want to go back to what you were saying about Citigroup. And indeed, we've reached out for comment. Citigroup hasn't come back to us with one, but she has included, and Jenny Strain was reading up your thoughts, and in an August filing, Citi did say their compensation philosophy includes the accountability senior leaders at the firm have individually and collectively to meet the milestones required for a successful transformation. Lack of sufficient progress will negatively affect the compensation of senior leaders, and senior leaders have the opportunity to benefit from the achievement of Citi's transformation goals. Is Citigroup going to be a beneficiary of Act 2? Who's going to win out the most when actual real consumer lending banking, loan growth, interest rate increases are actually going to come to bear?
Well, the bank that's best positioned is Bank of America. Bank of America is the most sensitive to higher interest rates. They're really America's bank when you look at their composition. And the other theme that we have is the technology revolution at banks. We completed a 100-page report working with our tech research team at Wells Fargo Securities. And the conclusion is not necessarily the revenues are going to blow the doors off of anybody at Bank of America or anybody else, but that the earnings will, because the incremental profit margin's much better as a result of technology. Banks have retooled their whole companies for the last decade. You've not seen the benefit of that until the revenues come back. You've seen that in capital markets. By the way, Goldman Sachs has exceeded expectations by a lot more than the revenues would imply because of the incremental profit margin. And now you're likely to see that as soon as traditional banking revenues come back, the marginal margin, if you will, should be twice as high as the existing margin. And we have super high conviction about that, even though I'm less sure about when that loan growth actually comes back.
All right, well, we're all going to be sitting here with our popcorn, all watching those earnings.
Can I eat
Mike,
it yet?
Yeah, you can go ahead and eat it.
Where'd you get it from? Are you helping AMC?